Hello and welcome to Nithrania YouTube channel. You're watching another episode of the Game in a Nutshell series designed for explaining the board game rules. My name is Branislav Berec and in this video we're going to learn how to play the game called Phraya from DMZ Games, who have also sponsored the video. Before we start, let me say that everything you're about to see in this video are early prototype components, so these are not the final components of the game. Now, let's get started. To set the game up, first assemble these four main board parts to form a square. You can arrange them in any order you want, as long as these are the edges of the game board. Then place this Royal Barge in the center crossing of the main board. Then sort these restaurant order tiles by their number on their back, shuffle each stack separately, and then start drawing the tiles from the first stack, the stack with number 1, and place one tile face up on each of these restaurant spaces. Only in a two-player game, before you do that, remove two tiles from each stack. Then shuffle these basket tiles and similarly place one of these tiles face up with this price on each of these basket spaces, these orange spaces on the game board. Then place this tracks board next to the game board, place the merchant on the starting space of the track, place these rover tiles on this designated space, place royal favor tokens on this designated space, and this price markers in the third column from the left in each of those rows. Then shuffle the market cards, place the deck face down next to this symbol, and then reveal the first four cards face up next to these designated spaces. Then each player chooses a color and takes the boat of the same color. Then 7 stalls, 8 discs, and 5 cards of the same color. These cards, these starting cards, have the corresponding color bar at the bottom of the card. In a 3-player game, remove 1 stall from each player's reserve, and in a 4-player game, remove 2 stalls. So in a 4-player game, players only play with 5 stalls. Now I'm going to set up a 3-player game, so players will start with 6 stalls. Then randomly determine the starting player, and that player will receive 6 starting coins. Each other player will receive 1 more coin, so the second player will receive 7 coins, the third player 8 coins, and so on. Then in a player order, starting with the first player, each player places their boat on the channel section, which is adjacent to the edge of the board. Channel sections are these areas between two crossings. So the starting channel sections are, for example, over here, they all have to be adjacent to the edge of the board. After that, in the reverse player order, so starting with the last player and going to the first player, each player places one of their stalls in any empty stall space on the game board. Those are spaces marked with these symbols. When all players are done, we are ready to start the game. Just to clarify, players have these cards in their hand and they keep the cards hidden from other players. In Phraya, players represent merchants on the so-called floating market on the Phraya River in Thailand, near Bangkok. They will move with their boat, they will buy and sell 4 types of food. They will sell the food to the local restaurants to earn money and the victory points at the end of the game. They will try to build more stalls in the market, buy these baskets which increase their capacity on their boats, and they will also spend food in the temple and give royal offerings to the king. These markers represent the current prices for each type of food, and this is the merchant who will move along this track one way or the other and may change the prices up or down for each type of food. The game is played in turns, starting with the first player and then go in a clockwise direction. And on your turn, you must play a card, then move your boat, and then take the actions at your current location. If you would be adjacent to this Royal Barge, you can also interact with that barge. Then it's the next player's turn. Players alternate taking turns until 2 of the 3 endgame conditions are met. First, if any of these rows in the king's chart is completely filled. Second, if there is any disc in this last section of the temple, which obviously is being filled from the left to the right. Or third, if any player builds all their stalls. Players gain victory points in many different ways. First, they get victory points for each set of discs they would have in this king's chart, and then for the majority in this chart. Then for each of their discs in the temple based on the food type, and also for the majority in each section. Then for stalls that are built on the game board, players will score points for the majority of stalls for the given type of food. And you will also score victory points for all the fulfilled orders from the restaurants. You may get some victory points from the market cards you acquire over the course of the game, and also for the coins. The player with the most points is the winner. So on your turn, you must perform 3 steps. First, you must play a card from your hand. The card is placed on your discard pile, and after you play the card, you have to fully resolve all the effects on the card. You can find the description of all these effects in the rulebook, but to give you the example of your starting cards, with this one, you have to move the merchant indicated number of spaces. So you move that merchant to the left or to the right. And then, in his current location, you increase the price of one of those food types by 2 steps and reduce the price of the other type by 1 step. So at the current location there is vegetable and meat, which means you can increase the price of meat or vegetable by 2 spaces and reduce the price of the other one by 1 space. Then these 2 cards with the similar icons do the same thing. In this case you don't move the merchant and only increase the price of 1 commodity. Then this one, with this one you move the Royal Barge 2 spaces and then give a flower as the blessing. I will explain what that is in just a minute. And with this card you move the Royal Barge, then give the flower as a blessing. However, as the icons at the bottom indicate, now you take all the cards in your personal discard pile, including the one you have just played. For each one you take 1 coin, and then you take all those cards back into your hand, but you don't move your boat and you don't take any actions. So, after playing the card and resolving the effects on the card, in the second step of your turn you must move your boat. You move from one channel section to another, that's 1 move. You must move at least 1 section, and you may move number of sections up to the number of your rowers on your ship. You start with 2 rowers, later in the game you may acquire 2 additional, so you would be able to move from 1 up to 4 sections. Now when you move, you may never move back to the same section in 1 turn, but you may move through sections with other boats, but you may not end your movement in such a section. However, a Royal Barge blocks the movement, so it's not possible to go through the crossing occupied by it. Then after that, in the third step of your turn, after you move your boat, you may interact with both stalls on the side or sides of your boat, and if you are adjacent to the Royal Barge, you may also interact with that Royal Barge. You may do these interactions in any order you want. However, you may only interact with each stall and the barge once per turn. Now in this section I'm going to explain all the effects of all the stalls on the game board. When you are adjacent to a stall with a food, fruit, vegetables, meat or fish, you can buy or sell that type of food. However, you may only do 1 interaction, so you may either buy or sell. You may not do both. You can buy or sell more than 1 piece during 1 interaction, and the current price is indicated with the marker on this track, and that price is the same for all pieces you buy or sell during 1 interaction. So if I would spend 6 coins here, I can buy 2 pieces of fruit. The price of the commodity doesn't change after buying or selling. That can only be changed when you move the merchant and perform the action on the card. Now let's say I only spend 3 coins and buy 1 food token. The reason is all the food tokens must be stored on your boat in these baskets. Each basket has a capacity for exactly 2 food tokens, and those food tokens are also printed on that basket. So at the start of the game you can only store 1 piece of each type of food. One last note, when you buy or sell at the stall which belongs to another player, that player receives 1 flower token. Place the flower token next to your boat, and flower tokens are important for royal offerings and also for worshipping the gods in the temple. When you interact with the place like this, you can either buy the basket or a new rover. When you decide to buy the new basket, pay the price indicated on that tile. So in our example it's 7 coins, and now the new basket increases the capacity of your boat by 2 additional food tokens of that indicated type. Actually you don't need to place it with the price side up, you can place it with the other side up. Then immediately refill the empty space with the new tile from the stack. If the stack runs out, then you would not add any new basket tokens. Now, instead of buying the basket, you may hire a new rover. To do that, you have to pay meat or fish, so you must pay that food back to the general reserve. Then you may take the new rover and place it on your boat. Now you can move up to 3 channel sections during your movement phase. As you can see, you may have in total maximum 4 rovers. When you interact with the restaurant, you may return indicated food tokens back to the general supply, and then you gain the money on that tile immediately and then the victory points at the end of the game. You must have those food tokens on your boat, then take the tile, place it somewhere next to your boat, immediately gain those coins, and flip the tile face down. You will score the victory points at the end of the game. Then refill the empty space with the new token from the supply. Start with the tokens with the lowest number. If they run out, next time you would replace the token with the token number 2, and so on and so forth. Now, when you interact with this temple space, look at these 4 temples, choose one of them, let's say this yellow fruit temple, and return 1 food token of the corresponding type from your boat back to the general reserve. Then you also have to spend indicated number of flower tokens. Here it's just 1 flower token, later it could be 3, 4 and so on. So return that flower token again from your personal reserve back to the general reserve, and then you can take one of your discs and place it on that space. At the end of the game you will score victory points for each of your discs in this area, and also for each of these sections players will score for the majority of discs. When you interact with this scribe, you may buy a new card from the display. To buy the card, you must pay either the coins or flowers. After that, take the card into your hand, then slide the cards in the display and reveal the new card from the draw deck. And finally, the last type of the stall is this administration stall. When you interact with that stall, you may pay 10 coins, take one of your stalls and place it in any empty space with this stall icon. In addition to the interaction with the stalls, if you are adjacent to the Royal Barge, you may also interact with the barge. You can move the barge as the effect on the card you play. In this case, you may move it 1 to 3 spaces. In this example, you would move it exactly 2 spaces. The barge moves from crossing to crossing, may go through the sections with other boats, and similar to boats, it may never move back during the same turn. So going from this with 2 moves, you cannot do this and then go back. You have to go forward, so to say. Then after the movement, it gives the indicated blessings. The blessings are given to the owners of the stalls, which are on the channel sections that are adjacent to the current location of the barge. In the example over here, The blessings would be given to this stall, this one, and this one. That means the purple player would get 2 blessings. So 2 flower tokens to the purple player. Then after you make a move and interact with the stalls, you may also interact with the Royal Barge, and when you do, choose any empty offering space in this king's chart, pay the cost of that space and place one of your discs there. In this row you have to pay coins, in this one you have to spend flowers, and over here you need to spend food or vegetables. In this one of these 2 food tokens, over here one of these 2, and then another one, and in this last space you have to spend 3 food tokens. So let's say we spend 1 food token, and we can take the disc and place it on the indicated space there. Now after you do that, take the King's Favor token. You may keep it next to your boat, and as shown over here, when you are at the temple or buying goods or buying the basket or the rover, you may return that favor token, and when you are at the temple, you don't have to spend flowers, you still have to spend the food, but you don't have to spend the flowers in order to place your disc there. Or when you buy the rovers or the basket, you get one of them for free. Or when you buy food, you get 1 piece of that food for free. If you have multiple favor tokens, for each one you can get that discount. So for example, when you buy food tokens, for each of these favor tokens you can get 1 of those tokens for free. The end of the game is triggered when 2 of the following 3 conditions are met. First, if there is at least 1 disc of any player in this last section of the temple. Second, if any 1 row in this king's chart is completely full. And third, if any player builds all their stalls. So once 2 of these 3 conditions are met, finish the current round so that each player has equal number of turns in the game, and then the game ends. Then, when the game ends, all players sell all their remaining goods on their boats based on the current prices for those goods, and players sell all their goods regardless of where their ship is located at the moment, and after that proceed to final scoring. First, players receive 1 victory point for each 5 coins in their reserve. Here we have 15 coins, that would be 3 victory points. Then score the temple. For each disc you have in the temple, you score the indicated number of victory points. So here the purple player would score 3 and 3 victory points and 4 victory points. Then the temple has 3 sections. This is the first section with these first 2 columns. This is the second section, and this is the third one. In each section, the player with the most discs scores this number of victory points, so 12, 8 and 5 victory points respectively. And the player who doesn't have any discs in that section has the penalty here. That would be 7 victory points if you don't have any disc in this first section, 5 and 3 victory points for other sections. So with this first section, here we have the gray player with 3 discs winning these 12 victory points. Here, when players are tied, split these victory points evenly, so both players would score 4 victory points. However, the gray player doesn't have any disc in this section, which means they would suffer a penalty of 5 negative victory points. Then, for this king's chart, each player scores 5 victory points for each set of their discs in each different row. So the black player has 1 disc in this coins row, 1 in the flowers row, and 1 in this goods row. So that's 5 victory points for black player. Then the player with the most discs in this entire chart scores 10 victory points. The player in the second place would score 5 victory points. Here we have purple player with 5 discs, that would be 10 victory points, and gray player with 5 victory points. If they would be tied for the first place, you would add 10 plus 5, 15 together, split evenly and round up, so both players would score 8 victory points. If there would be a tie for the second place, here the black and gray player would have both 3 discs, just split 5 victory points evenly, round up, both players would score 3 victory points. Then reveal all your restaurant order tiles and count up the victory points on these tiles together. So here we have 6, 6, 4 and 1 victory point. Then add the victory points from all your market cards. In this example, you would gain 2 victory points for each stall of the fish type. And finally, score the majority of the stalls for each type of food on the game board. Use this small table as a reference. The player with the highest number of stalls with the vegetable type would score 14 victory points. The player with the second highest number would score 7 victory points. If players would be tied, split the victory points in the same way as you would do for the king's chart. Then do the same for all other types of food. Then add up all the victory points and the player with the most victory points is the winner. So that's how we play Phraya. If you have any questions or comments, put them into the comment sections below. I'll do my best to answer as many as I can. If you like the series, please subscribe. You can even support the channel on the Patreon page. You've been watching Game in a Nutshell. My name is Branislav Berec and hope to see you next time.